Please consider becoming a patron of MythVision Podcast. You'll get early access to every video, including this amazing one, and you can ask me personal questions, private message me, anything you'd like. Professor Elaine Pagels, can you tell me about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene?
The Gospel of Mary Magdalene is an ancient text. It's at least 2,000 years old, but we never knew what it was because leaders of the church 300 years after it was written burned it, censored it, destroyed it, did everything they could to obliterate it. So the question is why? Recently, 5 pages of it were found in the Find with the Other Secret Gospels. Actually, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I have to correct myself. Actually, it was the end of the 19th century. It was something like 1896 in a garbage dump in Egypt where you find a lot of old papers. There were fragments of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. 5 pages left. It was probably like a 25-page text. And scholars didn't know what to do with it. And they just sort of ignored it for a while. But it is an amazing text. This text suggests that it's not written by Mary Magdalene, but it's about Mary Magdalene. Here, while Luke pictures her as a woman who'd been possessed by devils, and she later has the reputation in Western Christianity of being a prostitute, that's not in the New Testament. She was never said to be a prostitute. That connection was made later by some of the popes who were trying to show why women could not be disciples or priests. Mary Magdalene was kind of a figurehead. But in the Gospel of Mary, it opens the fragment we have in which the disciples are terrified. They're saying, they killed Jesus. They're going to do that to us. How can we go preach the gospel? They got him. They're going to be after us too. And they're terrified. Then Mary stands up, and it says she turned their hearts to the good. And she said, brothers, be of good courage. You know, the Lord has strengthened us and turned us into men. Well, actually, it's into human beings. She's made us into full human beings. And she says, the Son of Man is within you. Follow after him. Within you. He's within you. Follow him. Right? And so she gives them courage, and they begin to recover their spirits through Mary Magdalene's teaching. And then Peter turns to her and says, Sister, we know the Lord loved you more than other women. Why don't you tell us some of the things he said to you? Maybe we were away, we didn't hear them. So you might have heard something we hadn't heard. You have something to tell us? And she says, yes, Peter, it's not just that you were gone out to buy lunch. He kept some things from you that he told me. And Peter says, wait a minute, you mean he told you things he didn't tell us? Why would he turn and talk to a woman and not to us? And Peter gets angry. And he says, I don't believe the Lord said anything to you like that. Why would he talk to a woman? It doesn't make any sense. And she says, my brother Peter, what do you think? Do you think I'm lying about the Lord? Do you think I'm making this up in my heart? And he says, yes. Yes, I think you're just making it all up. And then his brother Andrew comes in and says, Peter, you've always been angry at women. If the Lord made her worthy, who are you to turn her down? Who are you to demean her? If the Lord made her worthy and taught her. And she says, yes, I saw him in a vision last night and he told me this. And Peter says, your visions don't mean anything. You're lying. So they have a conflict. And it's really about who is closest to Jesus. Is it Peter? Now, if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's Peter. He's the chief disciple. If you read the Mary Magdalene Gospel, it's Mary Magdalene. And she is closer to Jesus and one who understands him better than Peter. So there's this idea that various disciples had been sort of jockeying for position. Who does Jesus love best? The same thing happens actually in the Gospel of John, in which Peter and John are, competing to see who is closest to Jesus. The disciple whom Jesus loved, who claims to have written the Gospel, or Peter. And Peter loses out in the Gospel of John, but he wins in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So you see that there are different groups of Jesus' followers who have different favorite disciples. But some suggest that Mary Magdalene was one of those. And in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Peter loses the argument. The other disciples come to Mary's defense and say, "Surely the Lord knew her better than you do. If he loved her, we should respect her, so she can join us and go out to preach with us." And so at the end of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, she goes out and joins them as a missionary preaching the gospel. Now, why isn't that in the canon? Well, the bishops didn't like it. It suggested that women were capable of becoming missionaries and preachers and apostles.
Something that just comes to mind in everything you're saying, we have fragmentary data. Our evidence is not great. And when you've said this a few times, it never really dawned on me, that the dating of some of these things, that we try to date them late. It's like scholarship even likes to put a lot of these things really late in the game. But I'm kind of thinking, what if you're right? What if these go right hand in hand at the same times, if you will, with multiple groups, different groups of Christianity are already on the scene, and there's versions of this simultaneously.
Yes.
And these are the ones that didn't work out. They did not want these. So they get rid of them. It's not that, I guess I'm saying this to get your thoughts on, it's not that this Gospel of Mary Magdalene had to be written in the 300-400s, therefore it's just late in the game and they're ready to get rid of it. This might have been right there at the end of the first, beginning of the second or mid-second century.
You're right, Derek, that scholars often fight about dates. And they say, well, if it's written in the first century, that makes it better.
Right.
Fact is, we don't know when these things are written, because when it comes to the text like the Gospel of Thomas, well, we have a fragment in Greek, so we know it was available in the 2nd century. It was probably written about the time of the Gospel of John, because we have fragments in Greek and then later copies in Coptic. For the Gospel of Mary, we only have a fragment in Coptic. It had been translated into Syriac and Georgian and Armenian and many, many languages. It was a well-known text, but the only one that survives is now written in Ethiopic, and it's preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And Mary is regarded as a saint in some of the Orthodox churches, like Russian Orthodox and in Greek Orthodox. I mean, she is in the Catholic Church, but there she's a fallen woman, prostitute. In the Eastern churches, she's seen as a major disciple. So we don't know about the dates, but if you like the text, you'll try to date them early. But you can't tell, because the texts we have are written much later in a different translation in a different language.
We just don't have great evidence, right?
We don't. And then you have a scholar like a major scholar at the University of Cambridge in England, Simon Gathercole, says, oh, all of this stuff is terribly late. It's all written in the 4th century. And his purpose of saying that, he doesn't know, is to say, oh, it's all derivative, it's all garbage, really. The right Gospels are the New Testament. So, but the fact is, you are right. How many scholars are willing to say, actually, we don't know?
I have to say, one of the reasons why I think what you're saying makes more sense than something like this is all late and garbage and get rid of it, is I just personally don't find it to make the most sense out of the plausible explanations that you have all these already substantiated gospels and already these texts, and this is the way it is, and then people decide at some point, we're just going to start making up our own versions of it. To me, someone made these things, right, at some point, but to me it makes most sense. Multiple splinter versions of traditions are happening at around the same time, and when you have so many, we talked about this before, we need a straight truth. We need one that's we got too many problems. Look at the chaos that's going on. We can't figure out what we are. And so now we've got to cut it down. And male chauvinists, so to speak, people come on and say, hey, ladies out, be quiet. And whatever multiple other reasons might be playing a role.
And you know, when you look at Dale Allison's work about the Gospels, he says, you're looking at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Gospel of Thomas, any of them. What are they? They're constituted out of memories. Somebody remembered an episode, somebody remembered a saying, somebody remembered something he heard Jesus say, or this Peter said, Jesus said, or something like that. And those are the little nuggets that are written down in the Gospels that we have, 40, 50 years after the death of Jesus, written down from memories. But the question is, what do you remember and who remembers what? Something like what you find in the Gospel of Mary is about a dispute between Mary Magdalene and Peter. Now, she must have been a rather powerful person among the followers of Jesus. She was apparently wealthy. She gave money out of her resources to support Jesus. She was present at very important moments in the story. The first witness of the resurrection, for example, after the men had fled out of fear of being captured and tortured and crucified like Jesus.
Right.
But who remembered it? There might have been women remembering it, and their memories don't count as much as men's memories, right? Because men are writing almost all these texts.
You know, a recent blog article on Bart Ehrman's, he had a guest blog article, and the man said Paul wrote to this woman, I can't remember her name, somewhere in one of his epistles, in the authentic ones. And it sounds like this might have been Paul's sister, who was in the movement before him. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's a little bit speculative, but Paul's asking, he's greeting someone that he's going to meet up with, that they, like, as if they know something he doesn't, or I don't know exactly. I'm putting words out there, so I could be wrong, but he's talking to women. They obviously are important to him. So if he's early, why is Paul worried about women in Acts portrays? Acts, even though it's later?
Well, it's clear if you look at the last chapter of the letter to the Romans. Well, he says, greet Mary. She was, a hard evangelist with us. And greet this other couple, man and a woman, who were apostles before me. So there are women in the movement whom Paul recognizes as very important. So we don't know, as you said, we have a very small fraction of whatever was written in the first century, whether it's Sophocles' plays, or whether it's Plato, or whether it's the followers of Jesus. We have very small collections from what must have been a much wider literature. And
to end this recording right here, what you're trying to do is expand people's thinking. You're trying to stretch their minds from the narrow, we have a dogmatic understanding, and a lot of it might be based on trusting church father tradition. And I think we need to really take that with a grain of salt and say, look, there's real human motivation behind some of this that is maybe obscuring your vision from seeing maybe these other not so popular were just as popular, but it took a collection of men getting together and saying, no, we have to condemn these. We have to, if we're going to survive this, or for whatever political...
This is better for our church. This is better for the organization we're setting up. We don't want women in positions of power anyway. So we'll choose to get rid of texts that suggest that they might be entitled to them. But it isn't me trying to persuade people of that. It's the evidence that persuades me that we do have a much wider field. I mean, I'm just as surprised as anybody to go into this field thinking, okay, it's about the four Gospels, and suddenly the whole field expands because we have all these ancient texts we didn't know what to do with. And some people could say, well, throw them away, they don't matter. But they were there before a New Testament collection was established.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Thank you.